Hello and welcome to. It's been a little while in the making, new Keencast, and th- this is called the one where the cheese stands alone. Again, I am talking about my career in teaching and just the different things about it. One of the main things I try to do is keep it positive. Um, it's also because of what my guidance counselor told me when he retired. He said, "You only remember the good stuff." Well, he's right. I am remembering the good stuff. Not saying it was all good and all positive, perfect, happy, and all that, but that's what I'm going to keep a lot of, or try to keep it as much as possible with these videos. So, um, first thing before I really get into said Keencast is this. There are a couple channels here on YouTube uh, that are really cool to subscribe to and to check them out. One is The Blind Man Live. He's a really cool guy, very neat guy, a guy named Mark Lowe. And also Dan Regan Comedy. That's Regan as in Donald, the guy that served as Secretary of Treasury under Ronald. So it's Regan, Dan Regan Comedy, The Blind Man Live. They are both very, very cool pages or videos, sorry, channels. Anyway, um, so yes, the one where the cheese stands alone. Where did I get that from? Well, the first place I taught at was a place called Allendale. So the Allen and the Dale. There you go. A little bit of a background on that. Well, a lot of background on it. 1989, I had, finished student teaching, and now it was summertime. And due to uh, what I was told was there were too many math teachers the area where I graduated high school, that they didn't have any openings. And that was according to the HR guy at the district. And he said the Carolinas have a big need for teachers. And so it was North Carolina or South Carolina. I'd looked a couple things, and, being a poor former college student, South Carolina was free to get certified. So I did that, and through South Carolina, had all the test scores that were fine and all that good stuff. Well, again, it was 1989. I had graduated high school 5 years ago. I was class president, and we decided to have a 5-year reunion. And we had an amazing time. And the next day, fueled by Tylenol and Gatorade and bleary eyes from said good time the night before, and hardly any sleep the night before that, I set sail to this place called Allendale. Now, the weekend before that, yes, I'm nesting tangents, but weekend before, my dad drove me down to Allendale because I got an interview there, and so we went down like before, then went to, I got the job, went to Kentucky, then drove back down to South Carolina to start the teaching year. Well, and so that weekend before, me and my dad drove down to South Carolina to see what the place was like. We get into Columbia, South Carolina, in some traffic, and it was rather interesting because I saw this kind of older, like 70s Cadillac, the major gas guzzler, and it was blue. I'll never forget, and it had a license plate on it, and I didn't really think anything of it. That said R Bear, personalized plate, letter R, BEAR. And I didn't think much of it per se. Just saw it and like, oh, that's an interesting plate. And, I'm in the passenger seat, and Dad said, look over there at our bear. And when he said it just kind of, hey, wait a second. It stunned me a little bit and made me think. And I look over, and sure enough, it was Hall of Fame wrestler, the Russian Bear, Ivan Koloff. He was wearing the Russian Cossack hat, and I just looked over and just kind of waved, because if it was outside, I would have said, hello, Ivan Koloff, what is going on with the Russian Bear? But I chose not to, and the windows were up anyway. So anyway, we go down to this place called Allendale, and I interview, and it is a middle school. If you remember from the last video, I kind of knew what I wanted to be as far as what material I wanted to teach. The higher level, I just identified better with the geeks because I was one and still am one. But I wanted a job, I wanted to teach, and that's where they had the opening. So I interviewed, got the job at the middle school. Now, the thing is, the area itself, I didn't really notice much about it. I do remember how straight the roads were and how flat the area was. And I didn't see a lot of industry there. But, I just wanted a place to teach. And that's what was provided. After I heard a little more, the test score wise, that district was the worst performing in the state. And by the transitive property, it could have, in theory, been worst in the country. And I didn't know. I just know that I wanted to teach. And I had, they gave me one section of Algebra 1 because that was all that was needed. It was a small school. And I had about 30, I think, in that Algebra 1 class. And so that was, there were some very smart kids there in that Algebra 1 group. The way they did the grouping of the kids was by similar test scores. They'd section it off. Like 8-1 was the highest performing or achieving, and 8-9 was the least highest achieving, we'll say. And so yes, I went from 4 algebras in a trig to a not so high performing middle school. So I started out with, like I said, I came down South Carolina with some bleary eyes and, basking in the fun of the class reunion. So the first day is, they have a breakfast for all the teachers and in the district, and the district was small enough that all the teachers could fit in one cafeteria. So I don't know anybody there. I know 0 people there. And so I go and uh, find some other teachers that look also new and sit with them. And there's 3 guys, and we just kind of made small talk. And those 3 guys they were new, and they were all at the high school. I was at the middle school. So, again, it was 1989, and one guy was sitting beside of. I made some small talk, but I could tell that, yeah, this guy is pretty funny and pretty smart, and then found out he taught math as well. So, we're that guys across from me in a table there, PE teachers and coaches and stuff. So, um, they then, were going over. They announced all the new teachers, and we'd have to stand up, and um, they went through all the schools, and I saw this one very pretty redhead stand up when they were at the elementary school, and then there's a girl sitting with her at the table, a blonde girl that stood up when they at the middle school, and they announced my name at the middle school, and I stood up and sat down, and after they did that middle school and then the high school, the guys across from me looked at me and said, "We didn't see you stand up." And, being the sports fan I am, I looked at them and I said, "Yeah." They said, "Bernie Kosar, mathematics." And that just completely broke the table up. And so the 2 guys across from me called me Bernie every time they saw me, because I look so similar to the 6'5", kind of curly haired quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, 5'8", with a kind of a Bosworth still haircut with the flat top with some stripes in it. So, due to those similarities, they just couldn't tell us apart. And so the guy sitting next to me, like I said, we hit it off pretty good, and he laughed pretty hard. And his name's Woody, and the girls I was talking about that stood up, I realized the guys across from us were, they're coaches, they're athletic, yeah, they're pretty good looking guys, and all eyes were on them. And I still say to this day that the redhead I talked about and the blonde I talked about that stood up were looking through me and that guy Woody to look at those 2 guys. The redhead went on to be my wife, and more on that in a bit. And the blonde actually went on to become Woody's wife through a little bit of fixing up. So yeah, that was the first day. The breakfast itself was kind of interesting. You when you break your plastic fork trying to cut a piece of sausage, you should take that as a little bit of an omen. But anyway, they've like I said, me and that guy Woody, we hit it off big time as far as being friends, and so much so that we still to this day are best buds, and we were in each other's weddings, and many people were scared when we started teaching at the same school on the same hallway. Um, just because how well we were off of each other, playing off each other with things that were said and just riffing. Um, so uh, anyway, the I found out later that due to my haircut, that the way I got started dating the redhead is the blonde again, taught at my school. I had the flat top, stripes in it. I was referred to by them as skinhead. Like, well, there we go. That's a great name to have hung on you, with all that. But no, it was just because I had the flat top, so you saw, my hair was starting to fall out a little bit. So yeah, you could see skin. There you go. So yeah, they wanted to go out one night, and the blonde girl said, "We can ask Skinhead." So they came by. I lived in a the Allendale Motor Court was the name of it, and there was a roach in there large enough to chip in on the rent. It was just huge, and so yeah, they came by, and we went out, and we hit it off well. So the first time that, well, we, like I said, we started dating in September, and it was around the 10th, I guess. And then a couple weeks later, a hurricane was about to hit, and that hurricane was Hugo. And she said that she had talked to her parents, and they told her to get out of town and bring her boyfriend with her. So, for the hurricane, because they lived up in Greenville, South Carolina. So I didn't know that school was going to be canceled. So I asked my principal, can I take the next day off? Can I take Friday off? Because of that. And he said, okay. But then they announced later in the assembly that, school was canceled the next day. So, yes, I met who would go on to be my in-laws, when Hurricane Hugo hit. So, but there's some interesting people there, and that I met. One guy I went out to, last name of Lang, super nice guy. We went out to eat before the school started, and he, we went to this gas station, and he thought, okay, I'll get a chicken sandwich. And I promise you, it was a thigh, an actual chicken thigh between two pieces of bread. I was just in shock that was what he got. But Lang was a good guy, very good guy. And of course, I mentioned Woody, and my wife. And when me and my wife started dating more, after I had left, we kind of fixed her and Woody up some. And again, we went on to be in each other's weddings. There's a guy there, when you're new to teaching, it's good to have mentors, good to have role models. And I had a guy named Jim Brannon. And he was a heck of a role model, a mentor for me, because he was he could have technically been old enough to be my dad, and he'd been teaching for a while, and he just kind of caught the big picture of things. And it also helped that he taught across the hall from me, and so we hit it off well. He taught me on stress management, um, which could translate to playing golf and drinking scotch. So that's a couple things that he taught me to do, and he would just say some of the funniest things that would just very much lighten the mood because it was so needed. Um, he just would, whether it was telling me about large green rodents, or something being a gym dandy, or um, during testing, standardized testing. There's a scene in the movie Major League where uh, the back then Indians, their leadoff hitter gets on base, and you know Bob Uecker looks over to the press, and they're all giving him the thumbs up. Oh, that's a way to start the year. Then he abruptly gets picked off, and then he looks over, and the press kind of gives another gesture. Well, during standardized testing, when everybody is beyond nervous and uptight, I looked over across the hall at Brannon, and he gave that same gesture the press gave Bob Uecker when the guy got picked off first. And since I had to stay quiet, I had to fight to keep from laughing at said gesture. But yeah, he very much took care of me. He very much did. He also saw something in me, as far as he knew that I wanted to teach, and there may not have been the right environment for me. And his girlfriend at the time was the reading coordinator for the district. He was new to the district as well, but he and the reading coordinator, her name was Virginia. She had a real cool Mustang GT, and that was actually also her personalized Play It Awesome GT. She saw something in me as far as teaching wise too, and that meant a lot. So she helped me down the line as well. So yes, the reason I'm talking about them is because, in fact, I just stunk it up that year. There's no nice way of putting it. I was not good. The kids, some of the, it just was not a good match at all. It really was not. I mean, it was middle school. I wanted high school. I got middle school. The algebra ones, they were good. There were some very good kids there, and but the non-algebras, that's where the issues came, and there were some things that college doesn't prepare you for, like I don't know. They talk about calling parents. That is a great thing to do. That is the most important thing to do, is to, yes, call parents, let them know what's going on, let them know it's going good or bad with the kids. The good calls home that cleanse the palate. I had as much fun calling good parents as I did bad ones, because the good ones would would flinch, like, teacher's calling on my kid. What's going on? You say, no, they're doing well. Oh, and you just feel that sigh of relief from them. But I had this one kid, and he he wasn't doing well at all, and he had no respect for me. You know, so I called home, and the dad, I told the dad what was going on, and dad said, "Well, hold on a minute," and he said something. He hollered at the son. And I got your teacher on the phone. He's saying you're doing this and this. Well, he's lying. And, the parent didn't skip a beat. Well, my son says you're a liar. A few days later, another teacher, so I wrote him up. Nothing happened. I'll talk about the principal in a minute. Yeah, I wrote the kid up. Nothing happened. Afterwards, because his behavior continued. Another teacher wrote the same kid up for pretty much the same behavior, and he gets suspended, and we have to have a conference. So, yeah, as far as the principal goes, when it was my turn, when they called me in for the conference with the kid, because they called his teachers in at different times that he was having issues with, I said, well, I did what I could do. I called home. I was called a liar, and I did all I could. So the principal, yes, he hired me. He needed a teacher for the school starting the following week, so he hired me. I needed a job. He needed a teacher. Come to find out, he was from my buddy Brandon. That was his fourth school. He had been fired 3 different times from 3 different schools, and he wasn't really supportive of me. He talked about respect and how he commanded respect from everybody. That included a kid that, that Rusty, that just got up in the middle of an assembly and walked out, and he kept calling him, and that kid never turned to look or say sir or anything. He just kept on walking. And so yeah, he was he talked respect and didn't necessarily get it. He came up with a line that I will never forget. It kind of sums things up. And we were in a faculty meeting, and he actually said, we want every student that takes these standardized tests to do better than the school average. Since I'm a first-year teacher in this case, and I chose to stay silent. But the smart aleck math geek in me was just fighting back laughter and wanting to say something. But yeah, we want every student taking this test to do better than the school average. There you go. So yeah, he wasn't necessarily supportive of me. And, it happens. I will give him credit for this. There is one thing we agreed on, and that was at the end of the year, I didn't want to come back the next year, and he didn't want me to come back either. So, yeah, we had an agreement. It just was not right for me. It just wasn't. Some of the students, We're also, like I said, the one boy told his dad I lied on it. I was lying because I called home. Another one, I had to take a swing at me, and not really much was done to him. I did have a student named Sweet Chuck that said he was from China, and just based on demographics alone, there was no way that he was Asian. He was very much a conceptual kind of character. But yeah, so if the students weren't the best in the world by any means, and it's kind of hard for that area to flourish. One of the biggest industries there is the prison, and if a lot of the kids would if they get out and become successful, they don't go back. Poverty's bad. Not hard, like I said, hardly any industry. It's just it's sad because of the cycle that it goes through. So yes, it was. It's continuously among the worst performing in the state, and the state has actually taken over the district twice, and both times they just kind of came back like, we don't know what to do practically. So yeah, that's a good bit of it. Another interesting thing about this place is it's a geographical oddity. It's either well, now mind you, being a single guy that lived in a motel room, there wasn't much chance to cook, nor did I really want to cook anywhere. The restaurants there was a KFC, and I've always loved KFC. So at that, there's a Dairy Queen, and love my Blizzards as well. So there's also a restaurant there that I would walk to because it was in essentially the same parking lot as where I lived, called the Lobster House, and that was a good place to eat. But those were all local. Pizza Hut was 15 miles away, and since the roads were straight, a 15-minute drive. A lot of the other places, like Ryan's Steakhouse, was almost an hour away. It was 50 miles from everything, as far as like that, or it's also 50 miles from Savannah, and 50 miles from a place called Orangeburg. So yeah, it was 50 miles from a lot, and it was also 80 miles from Charleston. So yeah, it was just there in the middle of kind of not much. But again, the people there that I met were very much lifelong people. It was three different people that were first year teachers there, all wound up getting married. You know, Brandon stayed in the district, but he was a good guy. Like I said, Jim was a great mentor to me, and you need that. I mean, when the kids aren't doing well, I mean, he had a lot of those same kids, and since he was a little older, he knew how to deal with them, and they listened to him. They didn't want to listen to a 23-year-old with a flat top. Um, so you know, there was some difference there, um, but still, they survived me. I survived them, um, and I got along good with my teacher's aides. I had a couple different aides. One had a husband that was a cop, and I also had one named Miss Capers, and they didn't call her Miss Capers; they called her Miss Capus, and it was very funny because one time I had the kids actually write word problems, and this one, and like I said, her last name was Capers, but he wrote five of them, and the first sentence of each of them was Miss Capus, Capus, and there is just something that struck both of us funny about that. Um, so yeah, Allendale was not the best place as far as how I did as a teacher by any means. It's probably the worst. It was. I mean, you don't know what to expect coming in from another state to a place you hadn't heard of, and yeah, that's on me. Um, but Allendale's reputation is um, what that for most first year teachers, as far as a reputation of chewing them up, spitting them out. Um, so I'm not a unique case in this by any means. So yeah, I did learn. Um, it did very much reinforce that yes, I did want to teach high school math, especially on the high level, not the middle school. And just the mindset's different. It very much is. A lot of people love to say to me that they wouldn't want to do, they wouldn't want to teach math. And, we all have our strengths. Mine, uh, even though I'd return a couple different times, uh, would be middle school. I was not you know, just not cut out for it. And many times it's great to know what you want by learning what you don't want. So, yeah, it was very much that. So, what I'm going to do now is uh, there's a couple songs by groups I like in the '80s, and we've heard of homophones and homographs. Well, you could call this one a homograph because there's two songs that are called Planet Earth. Um, one by Duran Duran, one by Devo. And here's a little bit of the Duran Duran riff right here. Okay, so Duran Duran, Planet Earth. Devo's Planet Earth, not so much, not yet. So, anyway, I do appreciate anyone that tunes in. And there is, like I said, Jim and Virginia, unfortunately, are not with us anymore. They were both very instrumental in my growth as a teacher and as a person. Like I said, they helped me out down the line. They also celebrated my successes down the line. The first time the state took over that district, Virginia got to fire that principal that was so bad to me. And so that was really cool. When they told me that, when I was about to present at the state math teacher convention, when I ran into them and they told me that. So yeah, they meant a lot. Of course, the aforementioned current wife and her roommates. Yes, they had a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead that were college roommates. And I wound up with a redhead. My buddy Woody wound up with the blonde. And so the brunette is living in a different area now. So definitely something. And Lang is also down in Hilton Head, and I'm glad he's flourishing. He's also retired. So here we go. Here's to Jim in Virginia. To use Jim's own words, a couple of Jim dandies. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. Good night. Drive safely.